Imagine a world where every decision, every action has a ripple effect. Now consider the impact of sanctions, economic weapons wielded by nations. They are intended to force change, but what happens when these sanctions backfire? This is the story of 10 instances when the United States of America, in an attempt to sway China, ended up hurting itself. Our journey begins in the early 90s. The Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989 led to the U.S. imposing sanctions on China. The intention was to pressurize China into improving its human rights record. However, the result was a decline in American exports to China, leading to job losses back home. The next instance was in 1996 when the U.S. extended its sanctions related to nuclear proliferation. The idea was to halt China's nuclear ambitions. Still, it resulted in China ramping up its indigenous capabilities, which today poses a strategic concern for the U.S. Scene script, fast forward to the year 2001. The U.S. placed sanctions on China due to its alleged involvement in cyber espionage. While the intention was to protect American intellectual property, the result was a surge in Chinese investments in its own tech industry, creating competitors for U.S. tech giants. Next, in 2005, the U.S. imposed sanctions on Chinese companies for their alleged support to Iran's missile program. The intention was to curtail Iran's missile capabilities, but it led to China strengthening its ties with Iran, creating a strategic challenge for the U.S. In 2008, the U.S. sanctioned Chinese firms for their alleged role in the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The goal was to halt the spread of such weapons, but it led to China exploring alternative markets, reducing its economic dependence on the U.S. The year 2010 saw the U.S. impose sanctions on China over currency manipulation. The attempt was to protect American manufacturing, but it only led to China diversifying its foreign exchange reserves, reducing the influence of the U.S. dollar. In 2016, the U.S. sanctioned Chinese companies for North Korea ties. The purpose was to isolate North Korea, but it only pushed China and North Korea closer, undermining U.S. strategic interests. Fast forward to 2018, the U.S. launched a trade war with China. The intention was to rebalance trade, but the result was a slowdown in the U.S. economy, with farmers and manufacturers bearing the brunt. In 2020, the U.S. imposed sanctions on Chinese officials over human rights abuses in Xinjiang. The goal was to stop the abuses, but it led to China retaliating with its own sanctions, causing a further deterioration in bilateral relations. Finally, in 2024, the U.S. sanctioned Chinese companies over their alleged role in the South China Sea dispute. The aim was to resolve the dispute peacefully, but it only escalated tensions, posing a threat to regional stability. In summary, these 10 instances highlight the unintended consequences of sanctions. They show how these economic weapons, meant to force change, can end up causing collateral damage. They underscore the importance of considering the potential fallout before imposing sanctions and the need for a strategic, nuanced approach to international relations. Remember, every action has a ripple effect. And in the world of geopolitics, these ripples can turn into waves, engulfing the very ones who created them.